Roger Krulak. How you doing?
Pretty good. How are you today?
Not too bad. Not too bad. I appreciate you joining.
Happy to be here.
So I've gotten to know you over the past few months here, but I mean, even I only know tip of the iceberg as far as, how you got your start in the industry. I know you grew up in Cleveland, Ohio,
I did.
right? Now, I mean, was your family involved in construction? How did you get your start?
Yeah, I mean, I come from a family of developers and contractors and carpenters. My great grandfather was a carpenter. My grandfather ran lumber mills. Grew up in, my father was a developer. So I've been around it pretty much from infancy.
Wow, no kidding. So I'm kind of curious as to how you got the idea for full stack. I mean, were you working for like your dad and then you're like, there's got to be an easier way to do this?
Yeah, not exactly. But, there's nothing new under the sun, somebody famous once said. And so, my grandfather, of blessed memory, was involved in a modular project, which was a major project for the United States. It's something called Project Breakthrough in the 70s. And he, along with a brilliant engineer named Tom Dillon, created a product that was one of the three suppliers of modular assisted living facilities all over the country. They were concrete, but they were way ahead of their time, and it was long before you could do BIM modeling or anything of the sort. They sorted it pretty quickly, and then all of those companies had a single customer, which was the United States of America, and as a result of that, once it dried up after Carter left office, then all the companies sort of
Disappeared,
dissolved.
dissipated.
They didn't disappear. They shifted their focus and moved on to other things. But I was always fascinated by why we create the built environment like we did in the 1400s.
Sure.
Everything that we use to go into a building is like modern tech manufacturing, and then we put it together like we were like building the pyramids or like a
Right.
castle in the Renaissance age. So,
That's interesting. So it's in the blood, obviously, and you're part of the resurgence. I mean,
yeah.
at one point, I believe I read you guys built essentially the tallest modular building in the world at one
Yeah, at
point,
one point
right?
it was in the world. It isn't anymore, which is super exciting to me. I'm a little bit skeptical about like how tall can you make it kind of conversation. Like the
Yeah.
idea is to take advantage of the economies of scale that industrialization creates in order to create a value proposition for creating the built environment that you're using. And that's really what the goal is. And yes, our system can go tall and it is responsive to many forces, wind, seismic, pretty much, earthquakes, whatever else you want it to be responsive to. So that's good. I mean, it's a very robust system that way. And at the end of the day, the idea is how efficiently can you make it to give a value proposition to the end user or at least the developer.
Right. And I mean, you guys are operating pretty much all over the place too, right? I think East Coast,
Mostly East and
West
West
Coast.
Coast. Yeah, mostly East and West Coast right now.
Yeah. Very interesting. So, I mean, you know better than anybody how much of a dinosaur the construction industry can be, right? I think we're seeing it now more than ever, that narrative starting to change where, these ideas for prefab or for modular being more welcome, in architects' offices and GC's offices. But I'm curious to know what that has been like, you seeing that change, considering you've been in the industry, or at least the modular
Yeah.
industry, for that long. You must have encountered a serious amount of resistance, is what I'm
Yeah.
trying to say.
I do remember the days of being looked at as a many-headed crazy hydra and being like everybody rolling their eyes as I was talking, and they don't exactly roll their eyes anymore. Yeah, I mean, I'm incredibly impatient. I don't like waste of anything, so to watch the construction process and the what I call disintegrated process that it is created by is disappointing, partially because the need is so high. Like you have a market that is it's basically insatiable. So like, why can't we solve that? And you've got super smart people and lots of really interesting innovations on the product side and lots of innovations on the tooling side. So why can't we just take all those things? I always laugh when I sit into a, sort of a standard construction focused company. And like, there's nothing that we use in a building that isn't manufactured. And there's nothing we use as tools to put the stuff in the building that isn't manufactured. So how hard of a stretch could it possibly be to like take all that and manufacture it? So that's, and I usually, I sometimes more and more to your point, get positive answers. Like, we love that idea. How do we effectuate it?
I mean, why do you think that is? I mean, I think it really depends on the type of person. Like if we're talking about like developers or owners, obviously there is a built-in hesitancy, but I guess why are people like that? Why aren't they, open to new
Yeah, I
ideas
mean,
like that?
I think it's human nature. I don't think it's anything to do with sort of modular or industrialized construction or anything like that. I mean, human
Right.
nature and the way and the process by which real estate gets developed, has a bunch of stakeholders. And those stakeholders are notoriously slow to change. Like, the enemy basically. And
Yeah.
so the reality is they know that everything's not on time and not on budget, but they know how much not on time and how much not on budget. And so they're okay with it, which makes no sense to me, but that's really the fact because the reality is that you're almost never going to develop a project on time or on budget if you follow a conventional process. But they know what to expect, and there's always they have a recovery plan which is ingrained in their process. All of it's super disappointing, but it is a fact, right? It's a fact. Like I went to go visit a bank that was basically a workout bank, right? When everything fails, you come to them. And I told them, like, well, why don't you want to solve the problem? But like when everything fails, like we can make it so it never fails. And they looked at me like I was crazy. So like, wouldn't it be good if you didn't fail? Like, you're the
Right.
bank, like you have asset, anyway, so you get the point. And then of
Yeah.
course there's some interesting facts about the way we think about securitizing the asset that you're lending on as a bank, for example. Like they have traditionally, unlike say people who finance manufacturers who manufacture work in progress and all that other stuff, banks from a real estate perspective look to to securitize based on what's on site in place.
Which is
So
funny. It's funny when you think about that, right?
yeah. I mean, it makes no sense, by the way. I mean, especially with blockchain, right? It's super easy to track where everything is, right? Like everything can have a unique identifier and everything can be tracked. So it's sort of silly to say, oh, well, if it's not on site, that it's not securitizable or that it is not trackable, that it's not owned. The country has somewhat unsophisticated but very effective mechanisms for, creating UCC filings for things that are, sort of part of the securitization of a real estate asset. But so those are so the banks are one of the stakeholders.
Right.
And
Right.
then, there's the tradition of taking the lowest bidder in construction and then waiting till they fail and then finishing it and still hoping you save money as a result of that. And that's, again, sort of antithetical to the idea of aggregating the process in a way that is manageable and comprehensive and basically single sourced
Right.
or close to it.
It's kind of interesting. Like I came to Dextal from Hilti, North America, and two totally different processes I'm used to dealing with. The one thing that I found super interesting when joining Dextal was really the level of quality assurance that comes along with building off-site, right? I
Yeah.
heard you mention it 1,000 times. It's like, and
Yeah.
it's kind of in the same breath of what we were just talking about, where everything is precision manufactured,
Yeah.
right?
I mean, look, everything's inspected 100%. I mean, there's no building that's built conventionally that's just the case. I mean, there are some QA programs that are highly responsive, but it's still not 100%. And in our situation, it's 100%. Like everything we do, we check.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible. I mean, and then which then translates to higher productivity in the field as well, right?
Yeah, higher productivity in the factory too.
Yeah.
You do something twice, it costs an awful lot of money.
Ugh, I know it all too well. But kind of, we're all in the same kind of industry, right? We're all geared towards the same thing. I feel like a lot of these initiatives that we're seeing now with like decarbonization and sustainability um, seem to be pushing us in the right direction here. Embodied carbon is a big topic. Like, what are the specific things that Full Stack Modular, their process, has done to kind of help reduce things like embodied carbon?
Yeah, I
I
mean,
can
look,
I can re-ask that question, by the way, if
who
you
knows?
want.
Who knows? No, it's totally fine. I mean, like, who knows where the current movement is, whether it's really going to embrace the decarbonization or not.
I know. Yeah.
But our systems are inherently, we build to very high tolerances, so it's tight tolerances, so it's pretty simple to have a very highly impermeable, envelope, for example, and that, pretty easy to have a tight box and have very little air loss or leakage associated with that. And obviously, because we're building in a factory, we have very low waste. And then also because we're building in a factory, the amount of truck traffic sort of after foundations like goes down by like 70%. So all those things significantly decrease the waste and noise effect, heat effect, all of the things. And obviously can meet pretty much any level of sustainability, sort of up to passive house or living building challenge or whatever you want to do. And the cost isn't a significant vig in the when you're building it in a factory. It's it's material vig, but and not too much labor because it's pretty much the same process. It's just slightly thicker wall or slightly thicker insulation or but either way the boxes are tight and sustainable and it's very low waste.
Yeah. Do you guys see, and there's a lot of talk about tariffs and everything, and I feel like it's all changing day by day. Do you see that? How do you see that kind of impacting, I guess, our industry? Is that something to be concerned
Yeah,
with? It seems like the story changes day by day, but
I don't even know how to answer it. I could tell you I don't think it's going to affect sort of full stack more than it'll affect the construction industry. Like I think it'll be I think the pain will be even. Our processes might change a little bit. For instance, if you have heavy steel tariffs and we need to import some of the steel because some of the stuff we use doesn't get made in the United States. Much of it does, but some of it doesn't. So those shapes that we would have to import, obviously, are going to have an increased cost because tariffs don't go to anybody but the end user, and so the prices will go up. But which is why I don't really understand tariffs. But
me neither, for the record.
that aside, this isn't like I'm not a global economist, so I'm not going to even try to make an effort to solve that problem. But I do understand basic economics. Like if you charge $25 more for something, I'm charging you $25 more for something. You're charging your customer 25. Not super complicated. But that aside, what it would do, depending on the level of cost increase, would change the way that we design sort of our system, right? So we might optimize for steel rather than optimize for regularity, as an example. So so like the HSS members, rather than having like 3 or 4 thicknesses, of walls from first floor to 20th floor, you might have 10 because you're going to decrease the size of it. As for an example, that's one way we could that those forces could drive design.
Right. Where do you, I mean, again, you've been in this industry long enough. Where do you see it in like the next 10 years? Do you see us kind of like maintaining this positive progression?
Well, look, it like I said, you have insatiable need and you're going to have to solve for the problem. Or decide that you don't care that people don't have houses to live in, and then, which is entirely possible, but so kind of as an economy, as a country, as a industry. So assuming that you don't forget about the people that need places to live, you need to find ways to more efficiently deliver that kind of housing, whatever that kind of housing is. And industrialization works for every other industry. It also works here. And so it's not the only answer. And by the way, it's not applied, broad brush to everything. There are specific uses that happen to be very advantageous to industrialize, and then there are other uses that are quite more complicated. So I do believe that it is a tool in the process of trying to, build more of the built environment in a more efficient fashion, and it's going to continue to grow. And where's it going to go? I don't know. I mean, I think you will see the maturing of the industry do a bunch of things. One it will do is there'll be some interchangeability between, say, instances, sub-assemblies and assemblies and all of those things. Not 100%. I mean, Microsoft and Apple are still fighting, iOS. So, I don't think it's going to be completely consolidated, but there will be a roll up of solutions. So that definitely will happen. And then, so you'll see that. And then, I think you're also going to see consolidation in the industry, right? So like many industries, the idea of having staying power and market penetration is sort of pushing towards some consolidation. I think you're going to find that for sure. I don't know how much more evolution we can expect, whether there's sort of interoperable BIM design via, some set of parameters that is, sort of either cross-usable or customizable so that you can drive design DFMA, or as I like to say, DMC, we run DMC, design, manufacture, construct, and how that evolves. But the other thing you're also going to see is the construction industry supply chain
Mm.
is not really manufacturing focused and hasn't been for a long time. They're paying attention now. They're like, we're just going to make a catalog that's just modular products. It's their same products, but whatever. But at the end of the day, they're going to learn like all the other industries, like, like the car industry, the computer industry, the electronics industry. They're going to learn how to supply, the industrialized process of creating the built environment the same way. So they will evolve as well, whether that's packaging, multiple deliveries, proximity to the manufacturing sites. I mean, all the other things that you see, car manufacturers, suppliers, electronics manufacturers, suppliers create.
They all learn at some point, right?
Well, they're gonna, it's a market, so they're gonna adopt best practices ultimately.
Right. So what does Full Stack have on deck right now? What do they have going on? Anything you're, I guess you're most excited about for the near
Well, I mean,
future?
look, we are super fortunate to be working with California State, Cal Poly,
Saw that.
San Luis Obispo, 8 or 9 buildings, 4,200 beds on a design build process, which is very forward thinking. And we're super excited to be the chosen partner, but also be collaborating with a spectacular team. So we're super excited about that.
That's
We're doing
awesome.
a few projects on the East Coast as we look to move towards our focus to try to be a little more vertically integrated and do some of our own projects as well. So we're working on that.
I was talking to this guy who's an architect, just going back to, we were talking about BIM for a second. He believes that BIM's going to fully replace like the architectural drawing set as we know it. I mean, do you think that could be the case in years to come? Would that help your business model in cases?
It's such an interesting question, and I have I don't even know if we have enough days to talk about it. But, so the interesting thing is that it is absolutely imperative, right, that we build a 3-dimensional design model that is responsive to the 3-dimensional space of everything that's being built. And for that, BIM is fantastic. And there's lots of BIM systems, and some of the BIM systems really care about the product that you're using to do the design. So say, for instance, in the Dassault 3D experience, for example, everything you're using in your design has characteristics, and the characteristics are known. And as a result of that, you have to use exactly the right system and product in order to do your BIM design so that it has the knowledge of what its capacity is and what the flexibility of it is, etc. Which is super fantastic if you're going to use it over and over again, because it takes a lot of work. As opposed to, say, like your Autodesk side of it, which is, obviously lots of power, lots of things plugged in, but what you're drawing is relatively agnostic to what it's, the materiality that it's related to. So lots more flexibility. And as a result of that, lots less information. It requires a whole lot of sort of hand holding to make sure that you're taking care of it. And then at the end of the day, when you do all that, people don't think in 3 dimensions, or very few people think in 3 dimensions. So somehow you end up taking that model once you got it right, and you have to flatten it out enough so that people can understand what it is they're doing on those individual pieces and parts associated with that 3D model. So, and then obviously the associated clash detection and distribution and all those other things. I agree that it ultimately is going to live within that, sort of electronic space. But how it all evolves, I think we're not there yet. I mean, I think we're headed in that direction, but I don't know how quickly it's gonna.
Yeah, I don't think any of us do. Roger, listen, I can't thank you enough for jumping on. You've been great, and I look forward to collaborating with you in Full Stack in the future. And
Yeah. We're looking forward to this project. It should be fun. It'll be a small one, but it'll be a really good one.
Listen, we're looking forward to it regardless. So
Absolutely.
great having you on.